In this episode of Factorio Demystified, we'll be trying to formulate a plan and a design for how we're going to build that final factory that's going to take us through to rocket launch and victory, and also surveying a few of the many alternate approaches that we could take. Now, if we take a look at our pollution cloud, clearly that's cleared out for us. We'll just eliminate that. We have all these numbers on here. I've added those as tags so viewers can keep an eye on how we're doing in utilizing the various resources we have available. Still plenty here in the middle. We found some good oil down here. But now that we have all of this space cleared from the enemy, where do we build and how do we go about doing that? This is an example of the spaghetti planning approach, or should I say the lack of planning approach. This is directly from the Factorio wiki. Credit to user Zippy who uploaded this. And quite clearly we can see this is a mess. There's no clean and organized lines of supply in any direction. It's just all kind of jumbled together, and it works. Some spaghetti can actually be very functional. But imagine trying to get additional resources in across this from right to left or top to bottom, trying to expand production in any of those directions where you need new supplies. How exactly would you go about doing that? It certainly wouldn't be pleasant without tearing a whole bunch of stuff up. Spaghetti is typically the result of what will happen to a lot of new players. You just find, I want to build this, and I'm going to put it down, and I'm going to finagle the belts and everything, how I have to do it for that one specific task, without really integrating it into a larger long-term plan or consideration. And this is really the kind of situation that we want to avoid ever running into. This screenshot was uploaded to the Reddit by Ekmemis a couple years ago, and it's an example of the city block approach. This typically wouldn't be considered until you have much more advanced technology much later in the game. Essentially, it divides the factory into a grid of usually equally sized squares, with trains that we haven't gotten to yet delivering resources back and forth between each of them. And each square is a modular unit that's going to produce one particular type of resource, and that's going to get shipped over wherever. But you don't have to wait till the megabase stage to go with the modular approach. No matter when or how you get into it, the basic idea is simply produce a resource in one place, have the minimum number of resources taken to that location that are needed for it, and then ship that off to everywhere else that needs it. Whether that's done with your transport belts or some more advanced method, the concept is the same. Going completely to the other end of the spectrum, then, we have what's known as the sushi blocks concept, or instead of sushi, I prefer the term mixed belts. But this is a very small demonstration model of it. The basic idea is everything is going everywhere at once. I only have 5 products being produced here, but a full version of this would be, hundreds of these loops and just a ton of machines making all manner of items. And they're all combined together, and each of these machines just grabs what it needs when it comes by, and then it'll output whatever it is producing. This is not going to be efficient in terms of producing high volume of items, because most of the things that go by any particular machine, it doesn't even want. It's not even looking for them. And you need some advanced techniques to make sure it doesn't jam up with too much of one product at any particular time. But what this does do is it creates a very colorful, obviously chaotic aesthetic that some people really like and drives some people absolutely up the wall. And it gives you a sense of just how wide the range of possibilities are. I'm not suggesting this is a serious possibility for a new player that you should do this your first factory or any time in your first 10 factories. I'm just saying that let's think about all the different ways that you could organize a factory, and that will probably help us appreciate what we're going to get into in terms of the way that I'm actually going to suggest we go here. The most popular and commonly used method for organizing a factory is known as the main bus concept, and that's what I'll be demonstrating in this series. And in point of fact, we already know what a bus is. We've used it. We just didn't call it that. This coal line running through our smelting area, this is in fact a coal bus. What we mean is we don't just have one source of coal that's only serving the copper, a second one only serving the iron, a third one only serving the steel, and so on. What we actually have is one source, and we can split it onto multiple belts, but it would still be one source. Coming in, and okay, we divide off some for the copper, but then we keep going with the same line, and then divide off more for the iron, but then we keep going. So the coal bus is transporting materials between areas to produce multiple different products, all the way down to the point where, okay, now we only need coal for this one item, the stone bricks, and it stops here because we don't have anything else being produced out this way. But we could, if we wanted to, and simply extend it further. Now, another analogy that's been used, which is imperfect but I think useful, is that of a highway. So you can imagine you've got on-ramps for your traffic and you've got off-ramps for your traffic, and then you can have merging and you can have lane switching and all kinds of other activity happening on that highway. But at the end of the day, traffic goes on, traffic comes off, but the highway itself just keeps on rolling to the end of its route. So this is our coal bus. And we're going to take a look now at the basic outline and concept of the main bus, which is just many different products, and we'll decide and talk about what's going to be on the bus and what's not later. That has its own set of criteria. We just want to understand the basic concept and outline here. We have different sets of 4 transport belts and then gaps of 2 in between them. And this is so we can transport materials across the bus or perpendicular to it at any point with relative ease. So for example, if we wanted to take something from here and produce it over here, we're going to simply put in a splitter. And your starting underground belt can navigate a gap of 4 spaces, but not more than that. So that can jump, that's why this is 4 wide. And then we can move all this over here to produce whatever might be needed from that particular material that we split off. And of course we have the joining aspect, and that's pretty simple to imagine. Say we're bringing in steel or whatever else we might be bringing in, and that can join the bus as well. And this can be happening up and down, both sides. Now, not only do we have on and off, but we also have the bus itself can be bi-directional. It doesn't always have to go in everything flowing the same way. For example, maybe we have something coming from over here, and we don't necessarily want it to go north. Maybe we want it to go south. Maybe we want it to go both directions. So if we jump in here, and let's just take a little hop over, and if we throw in a splitter here, then in fact, we can go both directions, like so. Or we could have it only go the one direction, however we want to do that. So it's flexible in both ways, the main bus concept. Now, if you're to ask me to summarize in one sentence what this factory is, what the build of this factory is, I would say that it is a one-sided, shouldered main bus with a capacity of 30 SPM, that is science per minute, and expandable up to 100. So what does all that word salad mean? Well, we know what the main bus is. The one-sided part means that I'm only going to build production factories on one side of the bus. In this case, it would either be left or right. And then we could decide that whichever direction I'm not going to build on, let's say I was building everything over here on the left, then this side could simply expand with more rows added to the bus as far as I might need it to. And that way, I'm not going to get jammed up for space because I need more transport belts on the bus than I thought I might, because we can just simply move it in that direction. Now, it's going to make the bus longer than it would otherwise, and we're going to have to be moving a bunch of items across in this direction all the time, but it has that flexibility for expansion, which I think is really valuable. The shouldered item means that I'm not going to initially build items really close to the bus. I'm going to move a ways away so that I have room for splitting, and I've got room for merging, and I've got room for jumping over and around and through. Whatever else I might need to do with all my materials I'm taking off the bus to get them organized for this production line I'm going to build, then I'm going to have room to do that because I've got this gap, namely a shoulder. And then the science per minute is simply my target. I'm going to want to eventually build 30 per minute. Typical amounts that people tend to use are 45 is very average, and some people like to go as high as 90 or even 120 I've seen at the high end. But that's typically for much more experienced players who are going to be working on playing much faster. I think as a beginning player, 30 is plenty, but again, I'm working on having this as expandable as you can, so that's why I want to allow it to go up to at least 100. If you want to move things a little quicker, we'll have that capacity. Flexibility and ease of expansion are definitely a couple of really big positives of the one-sided bus approach, but there are some challenges with it as well. It's going to require more upfront cost than a lot of other methods will. We're going to need a lot of transport belts in particular, transport all these materials a long distance to where we're going to need them. It's going to require also quite a bit of space, won't be nearly as compact as a lot of other ways of doing it. Space is pretty cheap in Factorio, but we still want to keep in mind, okay, where are we going to build? So over in this direction, southeast, we're going to really want to keep this band of trees as a nice buffer for us. And to a lesser extent, there's some good trees down here. This isn't this wide of a gap. We've got some water over here. So I really wanted to take advantage of the areas to the west and to the north where there's a lot of open desertish type of terrain. So we're going to begin in the smelting area here. And these tags, we just hit the add tag button, type in whatever we want. We can use different icons if we feel like it, but they're pretty easy to add. And this is just going to be our furnace arrays. We're going to bring in all of our raw materials here, ore, stone, etc. Build our plates and bricks and whatever else we need. And then we're going to move up to common basics, which is some essential items that are used in a wide variety of materials, enough that we're going to want to put those on the bus. We'll get to what those are when we get there. Then combine those together and head up this way. And this is sort of where the bus proper starts, because we're going to have a lot of production over here. So we're going to run the bus from about this line west, and it can expand that way as far as it needs to. And then we are going to have the sort of shouldered area here, and then begin our production on this side. The depot mall hub, this is some core essentials for expanding our factory. We don't necessarily want a bunch of these to put on the bus or go anywhere else, but our critical materials, things like assembling machines and inserters and transport belts and many, many others, like we are building in the Jumpstart factory, only a much wider array of those. And then we'll go up to our labs. We'll get our research going as quickly as we can. Various sub-factories. These could be things like science packs as we unlock more of them, shipping more of that science back down to the labs. Or it could be mass production of something new that we might want to add to the bus, or that we're going to need for some other purpose. And we will continue up and up and up to the north until we eventually reach victory by building our rocket at the end of the bus.